long before there were kings, long before the flood that changed everything. There was a man whose story was deliberately buried for almost 2,000 years. His name? Enoch. What he saw completely shattered everything we thought we understood about evil, fallen angels, and the invisible war being fought between heaven and earth. Look, this isn't just some dusty old book. We're talking about a text that early Christians actually treasured, that Jewish mystics secretly studied, and that church leaders desperately tried to erase from existence. So, welcome. You're about to discover the forbidden knowledge of the Book of Enoch, the secrets they never wanted you to know. Who was Enoch? Okay, so in the book of Genesis, there's this really intriguing character. Enoch, the seventh generation from Adam, lived for 365 years. But here's the thing. Unlike literally everyone else mentioned in Genesis, his story doesn't end with, "and then he died." Instead, Genesis 5:24 says something pretty wild. Enoch walked with God, and then he was gone because God took him. He just vanished, taken straight up to heaven without dying, making him one of only 3 people in the entire Bible to skip death entirely. The others, Elijah and Jesus himself. But think about this for a second. What happened during those 365 years? What did Enoch actually see up there? What secrets did he learn? And here's the really big question. Why was what he had to say so dangerous that it needed to be hidden away? Here's where it gets interesting. For almost 1,500 years, the Book of Enoch was basically considered lost to the Western world. Early church fathers like Tertullian and Origen, they quoted from it all the time. The New Testament book of Jude, it directly references this book. Early Christians straight up treated it like scripture. But then something shifted. By the 4th century, church authorities, we're talking Jerome, Hilary, Augustine, they declared it heretical. They banned it outright. They condemned anyone who dared to read it. And slowly but surely, the Book of Enoch just disappeared from Christian Europe. For centuries, scholars actually believed it was gone forever, destroyed, lost to time. But plot twist, the book wasn't destroyed at all. It survived in the most unexpected place you could imagine, Ethiopia. So, while European Christianity was rejecting the Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church did the complete opposite. They preserved it carefully, they studied it deeply. They even made it part of their official Bible. For 1,500 years, while the West forgot Enoch existed, Ethiopian Christians kept his testimony alive. Then, in 1773, this Scottish explorer named James Bruce traveled to Ethiopia. What he found there absolutely shocked the scholarly world. Bruce discovered not just one copy of the Book of Enoch, but 3 complete manuscripts, all written in the ancient Ethiopian language called Ge'ez. He brought these precious manuscripts back to Europe, and in 1821, Richard Lawrence produced the first English translation. Finally, after all those centuries, the Western world could read what had been hidden for so long. But naturally, skeptics remained. Was this really an ancient text, or could it be some medieval fake that was created in Ethiopia? The answer came in 1947 with one of the biggest archaeological discoveries of the entire 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among those caves at Qumran, archaeologists found fragments of 10 different manuscripts of the Book of Enoch, written in Aramaic and carbon dated to between 300 BCE and 100 BCE. This wasn't some medieval invention at all. This was genuine ancient Jewish literature, actually older than Christianity itself. The Book of Enoch predated most of the New Testament. Jewish communities were reading and treasuring it during Jesus' lifetime. The Dead Sea Scrolls proved exactly what Ethiopian Christians had been saying all along. This text was the real deal. What's in the Book of Enoch? So the Book of Enoch isn't actually a single book. It's more like a collection of 5 different works, and each one reveals different pieces of this cosmic drama between heaven and earth. First, there's the Book of the Watchers. This tells the story of fallen angels and how they corrupted humanity. Then the Book of Parables, filled with prophecies about the Messiah, who's called the Son of Man, plus details about the final judgment. Next is the Book of Luminaries. This contains astronomical and calendar knowledge that angels gave to Enoch. There's also the Dream Visions, symbolic prophecies covering all of human history from Adam to the end times. And finally, the Epistle of Enoch, warnings directed at both the righteous and the wicked about the coming judgment. But it's that first section, the Book of the Watchers, that contains the most explosive stuff. Alright, so according to the Book of Enoch, during the days of Jared, who was Enoch's father, something catastrophic went down. God had sent 200 angels to earth. Their job was straightforward: watch over humanity, protect them, guide them. These were the Watchers, holy beings with a sacred mission. But the Watchers looked at the daughters of men and found them beautiful, really beautiful, and they started desiring them. Led by their chief, a guy named Semjaza, these 200 Watchers made a decision that changed everything. They came down to Mount Hermon and took a really serious oath together. They swore that they'd all participate in this forbidden act as a group, so no one person would have to bear the blame alone. They chose wives for themselves from among human women, and they had children with them. Now, this wasn't just some regular sin. This was a complete violation of the cosmic order itself. Angelic beings were never, ever meant to have kids with humans. The two realms, heaven and earth, were supposed to stay separate. But the Watchers crossed that line. And the consequences? Absolutely catastrophic. The children born from these unholy unions were called the Nephilim, which in Hebrew literally means the fallen ones. But these weren't normal kids by any stretch. These were giants. The Book of Enoch describes them as beings whose height reached 300 cubits. Now, depending on how you interpret that, we're talking anywhere from truly massive to absolutely enormous proportions. And they had supernatural strength with appetites that couldn't be satisfied. At first, the Nephilim just consumed everything humanity could produce. They devoured crops, livestock, every resource, at an absolutely alarming rate. But pretty soon, that wasn't enough anymore. The giants actually turned on humanity itself. They started hunting humans as food. They violated the natural order by eating animal flesh in forbidden ways and even eating each other. Blood was flowing everywhere. Terror ruled. The earth itself, Enoch tells us, literally cried out in pain. The planet was groaning under the weight of all this corruption. But here's the thing. The Watchers didn't just corrupt humanity through their giant offspring. They committed what might be an even greater sin. They revealed secrets, knowledge that heaven had deliberately kept hidden, arts and technologies that humanity was never supposed to possess. Azazel, one of the chief Watchers, taught men how to forge weapons of war. We're talking swords, knives, shields, breastplates. He showed them the metals of the earth and exactly how to work them. Because of Azazel, warfare escalated dramatically. Violence multiplied everywhere. Other Watchers taught different forbidden arts. Semjaza taught enchantments and how to cut roots for making potions. Amaros taught how to undo spells. Barachiel taught astrology. Kokabel taught the constellations and fortune-telling. Ezekiel taught knowledge about the clouds. Arachiel taught the signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun. Sariel taught the course of the moon. But it wasn't just military tech and fortune-telling. The Watchers taught humanity sorcery, how to make cosmetics, jewelry making, and even the use of antimony for beautifying the eyes. They revealed enchantments, potions, spells, the whole works. This knowledge corrupted humanity in ways that went way beyond just physical violence. It corrupted their very souls. It led them deep into occult practices, into trying to manipulate spiritual forces they couldn't possibly understand, into attempting to become something more than human through forbidden arts. The earth was no longer the paradise God had intended. It had become a realm of pure chaos, violence, and spiritual corruption. The archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel. They looked down from heaven and saw all the bloodshed. They heard the cries of dying humans. They witnessed every single abomination the Nephilim were committing. And they went straight before the throne of the Most High. "The earth is crying out," they said. "The souls of men are crying for justice. Please, present our case before you, Lord of spirits." God's response came swift and terrible. To Uriel, he said, "Go to Noah right now and warn him. Tell him to prepare for what's coming. A flood is going to cover the entire earth and destroy everything on it." To Raphael, he said, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, throw him into darkness, put sharp and jagged rocks all around him, cover him completely so he can't see any light. And on the day of the great judgment, he's going into the fire. All sin gets blamed on him." To Gabriel, he said, "Go after the Nephilim, these children of fornication. Set them against each other so they'll destroy themselves in battle. They won't live long lives, and absolutely no petition from their fathers will be heard." To Michael, he said, "Bind Semjaza and all the watchers. Chain them for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth until their judgment day. Then they're getting cast into the eternal abyss." The sentence was delivered. The watchers would be bound in darkness, their children would be destroyed, and humanity was getting a chance to start over through the flood. Enoch the mediator. But before all of this went down, something really extraordinary happened. The fallen angels, finally realizing just how bad their sin was and what kind of judgment was coming, they did something desperate. They called for Enoch. Why Enoch, though? Well, the Book of Enoch tells us he was known as the scribe of righteousness, basically a man who'd found favor with God. He got chosen to be a mediator between the watchers and heaven. The angels gathered at this place called Abel Main, somewhere between Lebanon and Senir. They were trembling with fear, their faces covered in complete shame. They begged Enoch to write a petition for them, to ask God for forgiveness and mercy. Enoch agreed. He wrote down their plea and carried it up to heaven. What happened next was, honestly, one of the most profound mystical experiences ever recorded. Enoch was taken up through the heavens. He passed through the clouds, went beyond Earth's atmosphere into celestial regions where no mortal had ever gone before. He saw the throne of God, completely surrounded by rivers of living fire, with thousands upon thousands of angels singing praises all around it. The throne itself shone with a brilliance beyond anything that exists on earth. Enoch fell flat on his face before the Most High and delivered the petition from the fallen angels. The response? Well, it wasn't what the watchers had been hoping for. "Go," God told Enoch, "and tell the watchers who sent you that they're not getting any peace. They're not getting any forgiveness." God explained exactly why. "You were once holy and spiritual beings, living an eternal life. But you defiled yourselves just like mortal men do. You fathered children of flesh and blood and brought massive wickedness to the earth. You revealed secrets that were never meant to be known. Because of all this, you're condemned forever." As for their children, the Nephilim, God decreed they'd be physically destroyed. But here's where the Book of Enoch reveals something truly chilling. The spirits of the Nephilim wouldn't just disappear, they'd remain on earth as evil entities, as demons, until the very end of time. The spirits of the giants are going to become evil spirits on the earth, God declared. They're going to bring destruction everywhere. They'll harm, destroy, attack, and fight. They'll be invisible to human eyes, but they'll rise up against humanity because that's where they came from. This is actually one of the most significant revelations in the entire Book of Enoch. It gives an explanation for where demons come from that you won't find in the regular Bible. According to Enoch, demons are basically the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, hybrid beings who should never have existed in the first place, now trapped between the physical and spiritual realms, absolutely filled with rage against humanity. After delivering God's message to the watchers, Enoch got shown even more. The angels took him on this incredible tour of creation, showing him the mysteries of the cosmos, the secrets of both heaven and hell, and the destiny waiting for both the righteous and the wicked. He was taken to the very edge of the heavens and earth, where he saw the foundations holding up the sky. He witnessed the storehouses where thunder, lightning, wind, rain, and snow are kept, all the forces of nature perfectly organized exactly according to God's command. He was shown the place where the watchers were being held, this dark, absolutely terrifying realm filled with pillars of fire descending endlessly. This was the prison where the fallen angels were waiting for their final judgment. He was taken to Sheol, the realm where the dead go. There he saw 4 separate chambers, one for the righteous, who were resting in peace, and 3 others for different categories of sinners, each one filled with suffering as they waited for the final judgment. He saw the place of eternal fire, specially prepared for rebellious spirits and unrepentant sinners. Pillars of flame were moving constantly, and the heat was unbearable even from far away. But he also saw paradise, this sacred mountain higher than any mountain on earth, where God's throne sat. On this mountain, he saw the tree of life, whose fruit would be given to the righteous on the day everything gets restored. Now, in what might be the most unusual section of the whole text, Enoch was shown the secrets of the heavens, and we're not just talking about spiritual realms here, but the actual physical cosmos itself. The angel Uriel took Enoch on a journey among the stars, revealing the exact paths of the sun, moon, and stars. This wasn't just poetic language. The Book of Enoch contains seriously detailed astronomical calculations, calendar systems, and descriptions of how celestial bodies move. Uriel showed Enoch that the sun has 6 portals it goes through during the year as it enters and exits, which creates the seasons. He explained how the year consists of exactly 364 days, divided into 4 seasons of precisely 91 days each. He showed how the moon completes its cycle in either 29 or 30 days. But here's what makes this really remarkable. Enoch was actually warned that in the last days, humanity would corrupt this knowledge. They'd mess with the times and seasons, turning completely away from the truth that had been revealed to him. The luminaries of heaven, Uriel explained, serve a dual purpose. They're not just cosmic clockwork running on autopilot, they're actually witnesses. On the day of judgment, the sun, moon, and stars will testify against the wicked, showing how they obeyed the Most High while humanity disobeyed. Perhaps the most controversial section of the entire Book of Enoch is this second major part, the Book of Parables. This section's packed with prophecies about a messianic figure that early Christians believed pointed directly to Jesus Christ. In his visions, Enoch saw this glorious throne, high and majestic, completely surrounded by light and fire. On the throne sat someone whose face shone like the brilliance of the sun, whose robe was whiter than snow itself. Enoch asked the angels with him, "Who is this sitting on the throne of glory?" "This is the Son of Man," they answered, "who was revealed before the creation of the world even happened. He's going to be the judge of kings and the mighty, of the righteous and the wicked. He'll bring justice and light to the righteous, and will destroy the wicked forever." The term Son of Man shows up throughout the Book of Parables, and it's the exact same title that Jesus used for himself more than any other in the Gospels. This has led scholars into some intense debates. Did Jesus adopt this title from the Book of Enoch? Or was the Book of Parables actually written after Jesus by Christians trying to make their faith look more ancient? The debate's still unresolved because, interestingly enough, no fragments of the Book of Parables have ever been found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's the one section of the Book of Enoch that's missing from the whole Qumran library. Some scholars argue this proves it was written later, maybe in the 1st or 2nd century CE. Others suggest it was simply lost, or that the Essenes at Qumran just didn't include it in their collection. What's undeniable, though, is that the messianic figure described in the Book of Parables has some remarkable similarities to the Jesus we read about in the Gospels. He's called the Son of Man, the Righteous One, and the Chosen One. He was chosen before the world was even created. He's going to sit in judgment over all humanity. Kings and powerful people will tremble before him. He's going to be a light to all nations. He'll establish a kingdom that lasts forever. The righteous will shine brightly in his presence. The wicked will be thrown into eternal darkness. Whether these prophecies influenced early Christianity or whether early Christianity influenced this section of Enoch, well, the parallels are pretty striking either way. Enoch's vision of the final judgment is vivid and honestly terrifying. He saw the Lord of Spirits calling together all nations. Every single person who ever lived, from the most powerful king down to the humblest peasant, standing before the Son of Man. Heavenly books were being opened, containing every single deed ever committed. Each person was judged based on exactly what they'd done. The kings and powerful people trembled in absolute fear. They realized their wealth meant nothing. Their power couldn't save them. They tried to hide, but there was literally nowhere to escape. They cried out for mercy, but it was way too late. The righteous, though, they were called to the throne. Their faces were shining with joy as they received their reward. "Come, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom that's been prepared for you from the very beginning of time." The sinners were thrown into eternal darkness, where flames never stop and torment has no end. The fallen angels and rebellious stars were thrown into this same place, crying out for mercy but finding absolutely none. But the righteous were taken to a paradise that's beyond imagination, a place with trees full of fruit, rivers of living water, and a light that never ever fades. There they'd live in complete peace, in the presence of the Son of Man, never suffering again. One of the most fascinating sections of the Book of Enoch is what's called the animal apocalypse, or dream visions. It's basically a symbolic retelling of all human history from Adam to the final judgment, where humans are represented as animals and angels as humans. This isn't just random imagery, by the way. It's actually a really sophisticated allegory that tells humanity's entire story in coded form. Here's how the symbolism breaks down. White bulls represent the righteous patriarchs like Adam, Seth, and Noah. Black and red animals represent corrupted humans. Stars falling from heaven represent the fallen angels. Elephants, camels, and donkeys represent the Nephilim and their descendants. Sheep represent the faithful people of Israel. Wolves, lions, and wild beasts represent Gentile nations. Rams and he-goats represent leaders and prophets. The vision starts with a white bull, that's Adam, and from him comes another white bull, which is Seth, and then more white bulls representing the righteous line of patriarchs. But then some bulls start mixing with other animals, which represents the corruption that eventually led to the flood. The fallen stars, those are the angels, descend and start mating with cows, which are the human women, producing these monstrous offspring, elephants, camels, and donkeys. Those are the Nephilim. These creatures wreak absolute havoc on earth until water covers everything. That's the flood. After the flood, a white bull comes out of the ark, that's Noah, giving rise to 3 young bulls, which are Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From them, sheep multiply and spread across the entire earth. The vision continues through all of biblical history. The Tower of Babel is shown as the bulls trying to build a tower up to heaven. Abraham is a white bull, being called from among all the other bulls. Isaac and Jacob are more white bulls. The Exodus is where the sheep get liberated from the wolves. The conquest of Canaan shows sheep driving out wild beasts. The monarchy is when ram leaders rise up. The exile is sheep getting scattered among wolves. The return is sheep coming back to their land. But here's the thing, the vision doesn't stop with past history. It keeps going into the future, describing events that Enoch claims haven't happened yet. There's the coming of a special ram, possibly representing the Messiah, a final battle, and the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. In another prophetic vision, Enoch divides all of human history into 10 weeks. Now, these are symbolic periods of time, and each one represents a major epoch. First week, the creation of heaven and earth, Adam's birth. Second week, sin rises up and the flood comes. Third week, Abraham and the patriarchs, God's chosen lineage. Fourth week, the law gets given through Moses. Fifth week, the temple gets built, kings and prophets arise. 6th week, Elijah ascends to heaven, corruption increases everywhere. 7th week, the apostate generation appears, but a remnant gets chosen. 8th week, the righteous receive the sword of judgment. 9th week, judgment gets revealed to the entire world. 10th week, the eternal judgment happens, the old heaven and earth pass away, a new heaven appears. This apocalyptic timeline gave believers an actual framework for understanding where they were in God's plan and what was still coming. So here's the crucial question we need to tackle. If the Book of Enoch was so treasured by early Christians, quoted in the New Testament, and found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, why did it ultimately get excluded from the Bible? Why did church authorities ban it? There are several reasons, and honestly, they reveal quite a bit about the politics of early Christianity. The Book of Enoch presents a radically different explanation for how evil and sin entered the world compared to the Genesis account that church fathers preferred. In the traditional interpretation of Genesis, evil enters the world through Adam and Eve's disobedience in the Garden of Eden. Humanity alone is responsible for the fall. We brought sin on ourselves through our own free will. But the Book of Enoch tells a completely different story. Yes, humans sinned, but they were corrupted by outside forces. The Watchers introduced evil. The fallen angels taught humanity forbidden knowledge. The Nephilim terrorized and ate people. In this version of events, humanity is just as much a victim as they are a perpetrator. This raised some really uncomfortable theological questions. If fallen angels corrupted humanity, are humans truly responsible for sin? Does free will even exist if we were being manipulated by cosmic beings? How much of human wickedness actually comes from us, and how much was introduced from outside? Church authorities preferred a much cleaner narrative, where human responsibility was completely unambiguous. The Book of Enoch describes angels in ways that made a lot of church leaders really uncomfortable. These aren't the ethereal, sexless beings of later Christian tradition. These are powerful entities with desires, passions, and the actual ability to have kids. The whole idea that angels could lust after human women, could have physical relations with them, and could produce offspring, this challenged emerging doctrines about what spiritual beings actually are. Plus, if angels could fall so completely, what did that say about heaven's stability? If 200 angels could rebel, could more follow? Was heaven itself somehow vulnerable to corruption? The Book of Enoch's claim that demons are actually the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim created some serious theological problems. If demons come from the giants rather than from Satan's original rebellion, then when did they actually originate? After creation? After Adam's fall? This really muddied the waters of angelology and demonology. Plus, if these demons are essentially trapped between the physical and spiritual realms, neither fully spirit nor fully flesh, then what does that say about the nature of good and evil, life and death, the body and the soul? This might seem minor, but it was actually pretty significant. The Book of Enoch presents a 364-day solar calendar that's perfectly divisible by 7, where each year contains exactly 52 weeks. But by the 4th century, Christianity had fully adopted the Julian calendar based on Roman calculations. The astronomical Book of Enoch, with its completely different calendar system, potentially challenged the dates of Christian festivals like Easter. Some communities that followed Enochic teachings were using different calendars for religious observances, which created division and confusion. Perhaps most importantly, the Book of Enoch represented a form of knowledge that didn't come through official church channels. By the 4th century, church authorities were working really hard to establish a fixed biblical canon, a clearly defined set of books that would be considered scripture. They wanted complete control over what was and wasn't authoritative. The Book of Enoch, with its claims of secret heavenly knowledge revealed directly to a righteous man, completely bypassed ecclesiastical authority. If Enoch could receive direct revelation from God and angels, what did that say about the Church's role as the mediator between God and humanity? By 400 CE, The verdict was crystal clear. While the Ethiopian church continued embracing the Book of Enoch, Western Christianity officially rejected it. It got branded as apocryphal at best, completely heretical at worst. The church fathers who condemned it, Jerome, Augustine, and others, they argued that it wasn't actually written by the real Enoch, and they were probably right about that. It contained theological errors. It encouraged speculation about things humans shouldn't know about. It was potentially leading people astray with its vivid descriptions of angels and demons. And so, for 1,500 years, the Book of Enoch was lost to Western Christianity. The secrets it contained got suppressed. The stories it told were forgotten, except in Ethiopia, where these ancient words were carefully preserved, just waiting for the day when the world would be ready to hear them again. Despite getting rejected later on, the Book of Enoch's influence on early Christianity honestly cannot be overstated. Its fingerprints are absolutely all over the New Testament. The Book of Jude directly quotes from the Book of Enoch, referring to Enoch, the seventh from Adam, and his prophecy about the Lord coming with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment. This is literally word for word from Enoch's opening chapter, but the connections go so much deeper than that. Consider these parallels. The Son of Man, Jesus' favorite way of referring to himself, appears over 80 times in the Gospels. While it does show up in the Book of Daniel, the Book of Enoch develops this messianic title extensively, describing the Son of Man as this pre-existent heavenly figure who's going to judge all creation. Gehenna and hell. Jesus' descriptions of hell, the eternal fire, the place of darkness, the weeping and gnashing of teeth, they echo the Book of Enoch's incredibly detailed descriptions of where the wicked get punished. Angels and demons. The New Testament's whole worldview of spiritual warfare, with angels and demons actively involved in human affairs, closely mirrors the cosmology that's laid out in the Book of Enoch. The parable of the sheep and goats. Jesus' judgment scene in Matthew 25, where nations get separated like sheep and goats, may have actually been influenced by Enoch's animal apocalypse. Early church fathers explicitly acknowledged what they owed to the Book of Enoch. Tertullian, who lived from 160 to 225 CE, defended the Book of Enoch and argued it should be considered scripture, pointing out that Jude's epistle validated it. Clement of Alexandria, 150 to 215 CE, quoted from it and treated it as authoritative scripture. Irenaeus, 130 to 202 CE, referenced it in his arguments against heresies, accepting its historical claims about the fallen angels. Origen, 184 to 253 CE, cited it, though he did express some reservations about its status. It was only in the later 4th and 5th centuries, as Christianity became more institutionalized and the biblical canon was being finalized, that the Book of Enoch really fell out of favor. The Book of Enoch also played a crucial role in developing Jewish mysticism, particularly what's called Merkabah mysticism, that's throne chariot mysticism, and what would eventually become Kabbalah. The influential scholar Gershom Scholem actually wrote, "The main subjects of the later Merkabah mysticism already occupy a central position in the older esoteric literature, best represented by the Book of Enoch." Enoch's vision of God's throne, surrounded by rivers of fire and attended by angels, became like a template for Jewish mystical experiences. The practice of ascending through the heavens, which is a meditative technique in Jewish mysticism, clearly draws from Enoch's journeys through the celestial realms. The elaborate angelology in the Book of Enoch, naming specific angels and what they do, influenced Jewish magical texts and mystical traditions for literally centuries. The rediscovery of the Book of Enoch in the 18th century and its validation through the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century has sparked this huge renewed interest in what it contains. Ancient astronaut theories. Some alternative historians have interpreted the Watchers as extraterrestrial beings who came to Earth and interbred with humans. Now, mainstream scholars reject this interpretation completely, but it's become really popular in certain circles. The description of the Watchers descending from the sky, possessing advanced knowledge, and creating hybrid offspring does bear some superficial similarity to UFO abduction narratives. Nephilim research. There's been increased interest in the Nephilim and whether any evidence of giant beings actually exists in the archaeological record. While mainstream archaeology doesn't support the existence of 450-foot giants, there are tons of legends from cultures all around the world about giant humans in ancient times. Spiritual warfare. Many modern Christians, particularly in charismatic and Pentecostal traditions, have embraced the Book of Enoch's worldview of spiritual warfare between angelic and demonic forces. The book provides a real framework for understanding demonic activity and spiritual oppression. Prophecy studies. End times prophecy enthusiasts study the apocalyptic sections of Enoch, looking for parallels with current events and trying to figure out where we are in the timeline of those weeks of history. All right, so now we need to address the elephant in the room. Is any of this actually true? Let's be really clear about what we know for certain. The Book of Enoch is definitely an ancient text, with portions dating back to at least the 3rd century BCE. It was widely read and hugely influential in what's called Second Temple Judaism, roughly 500 BCE to 70 CE. It got quoted in the New Testament and was respected by early Christians. It was preserved completely only in Ethiopia, where it still remains part of the biblical canon. The Dead Sea Scrolls confirm that most of its contents are genuinely ancient. Whether any of it was actually written by the biblical Enoch? Almost certainly not. Whether the stories it tells are historical, mythological, or allegorical. Why it ultimately got excluded from most biblical canons. How much it influenced versus how much it was influenced by other religious traditions. Modern scholars are virtually unanimous that the Book of Enoch wasn't written by Enoch himself. The biblical Enoch would have lived thousands of years before writing was even invented. The book was likely put together by multiple Jewish authors over several centuries, using Enoch's name to give their writings authority. This was actually a common practice in ancient religious literature called pseudepigraphy. But that doesn't mean it's worthless or fake in any meaningful sense. Like all ancient religious texts, the Book of Enoch reflects the beliefs, concerns, and spiritual insights of the communities that produced it. It tells us what Jewish communities in the last centuries before Christ actually believed about angels, demons, judgment, and humanity's fate. The most historically interesting question is probably this: what inspired the whole story of the Watchers and Nephilim in the first place? The Book of Enoch is essentially a massive expansion of 4 really enigmatic verses in Genesis 6:1-4. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." These verses have puzzled interpreters for literally millennia. Who were these sons of God? What were the Nephilim exactly? Why does this strange story appear right before the account of the flood? The Book of Enoch provides one clear answer. The sons of God were angels who rebelled, and the Nephilim were their monstrous offspring. This interpretation was actually dominant in ancient Judaism and early Christianity. Later on, as the whole idea of angels mating with humans became theologically uncomfortable, alternative interpretations started emerging. Like, the sons of God were the righteous line of Seth, marrying into the corrupted line of Cain. But this interpretation really has to stretch the meaning of Nephilim, and doesn't explain at all why such marriages would produce giants or these mighty men. What's particularly interesting is that the Book of Enoch frames the Great Flood, primarily as a response to the Watcher's sin, not to general human wickedness. In Genesis, the flood comes because the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. It's all about human sin. In Enoch, though, the flood comes specifically to destroy the Nephilim and purge the earth of the corruption that the Watchers introduced. It's about cosmic corruption that humans couldn't possibly fix on their own. Noah isn't just the one righteous man, he's genetically pure, completely untainted by the Watcher-human hybridization. The flood preserves not just human morality, but actually human genetics. This is a fundamentally different origin story for the flood, and it raises some really profound questions about the nature of evil and redemption. Whether you view the Book of Enoch as actual scripture, as ancient mythology, or just as fascinating historical literature, it contains some genuinely profound themes that are worth thinking about. The Book of Enoch doesn't shy away from the problem of evil at all. It acknowledges that wickedness exists on a cosmic scale, that there are real forces beyond human control working actively against goodness and righteousness, but it also provides hope. Evil didn't win. The Watchers got bound. Their offspring were destroyed. Justice, though delayed, eventually arrived. The flood cleansed the earth and gave humanity a genuine fresh start. In modern terms, Enoch reminds us that while we do face real evil, both from outside forces and from our own inclinations, evil is not eternal. It will be judged. Justice will come eventually. One of the central themes of the whole Watcher's story is that they revealed knowledge humans simply weren't ready to handle. They gave humanity technology, arts, and spiritual practices before we had the wisdom to use them properly. This is remarkably relevant today, isn't it? We're living in an age of absolutely unprecedented technological power, nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, social media manipulation. Like those ancient humans who received knowledge from the Watchers, we've got capabilities we may not be wise enough to wield responsibly. The Book of Enoch warns us pretty clearly. Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. Power without righteousness leads straight to destruction. Not everything that can be known should be known. Not everything that can be done should be done. The Book of Enoch, Ancient Mysteries Revealed, a text that literally changed history, a book that was banned because its truths were considered too dangerous. Knowledge that survived against absolutely all odds. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through one of the most fascinating texts in all of religious history. If you found this exploration valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with others who might be interested in uncovering the hidden knowledge of our past. Let me know down in the comments. Have you actually read the Book of Enoch? What aspects of it intrigue you the most? Do you think it should have been included in the Bible? What questions do you still have about the Watchers, the Nephilim, and Enoch's visions? Until next time, keep seeking truth, keep questioning everything, keep exploring the ancient mysteries that shape our understanding of reality.